I'm Eric, and this is Forbidden Files Asia. Truth is never just black and white. His name, you might have heard it before, Lam Kor-wan, the man the Hong Kong press once called the Rainy Night Butcher. He wasn't just a killer, he was an experimenter of death, calm, precise, and almost scientific in his cruelty. In the early 1980s, Hong Kong was a city that never slept. Neon lights filled the skyline, the streets were crowded with taxis, and the nights were full of life. But behind that glittering surface, one taxi driver was quietly hunting in the rain, searching for his next victim. Lam had once spent only 102 days in a mental hospital before being released. Afterward, he changed his name, took a job as a night shift taxi driver, and began a series of silent disappearances that would haunt the city for decades. Tonight, we revisit the story of Hong Kong's first known serial killer, Lam Kor-wan. It was the morning of February 11th, 1982, when a construction worker was inspecting the Shingmun River in the district of Sha Tin. The water was calm, the air heavy with humidity, and nothing seemed unusual, until he noticed something floating near the bridge. It looked like a small doll's head. Curious, he used an iron hook to pull it closer, but as it turned under the light, he froze. It wasn't a doll. It was the severed head of a woman. Her short hair clung to pale skin, her golden earrings still in place. Parts of her scalp had already peeled away from the bone, and her skin had turned ghostly white after days in the water. The worker immediately alerted the police. By the time investigators arrived, they knew this was no ordinary murder. As police divers searched the Shingmun River, they began pulling out more body parts. Everything belonged to the same woman. Her remains were swollen and pale, but one detail stood out: a tattoo on her right arm. It was a heart pierced by a dagger, wrapped by a flying swallow. Investigators released the description to the public, hoping someone would recognize it. Not long after, two men came forward, an elderly father and a middle-aged husband. They identified the victim as Chan Fun Lam, a 22-year-old hostess who worked at a nightclub in Tim Sha Tsui. Chan's husband told police that she had debts and had been seeing another man, a flashy customer known by the nickname Four Eyes. On the night she disappeared, she had been drinking heavily with colleagues. When it was time to go home, her friends helped her into a taxi and watched as she rode off into the rain. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. In the following months, more women began to vanish: a cashier, a cleaner, and a teenage student. Each of them disappeared after taking a taxi late at night. The press called it the death taxi scare. People stopped going out after dark. Women avoided cabs, choosing to walk home in the rain rather than risk stepping into the wrong car. What started as one horrifying discovery had now become a citywide panic. Everyone wondered the same thing: who was driving that taxi? Months passed, and the case seemed to have gone cold. Then, in August 1982, a strange incident broke the silence. At a small photo lab in Mongkok, a technician was processing film rolls sent from another branch. It was routine work, until one roll of negatives stopped him cold. The images were dark and blurry, but the outlines were unmistakable. Human limbs, dismembered, arranged on a floor. The technician hesitated. These weren't artistic photos or movie props. He called the police immediately. Investigators suspected the photos might be linked to the unsolved murders. They decided to wait inside the photo lab, setting a quiet trap for whoever came to pick them up. On the evening of August 17th, a man in his late 20s walked in. Calm, polite, nothing unusual. He flipped through the printed photos carefully and even pocketed a few that didn't belong to him. That was enough. The officers stepped forward and arrested him on the spot. When questioned, the man claimed he was just picking up the photos for a friend, someone nicknamed Four Eyes, who supposedly worked for a newspaper. But when police checked, no such person existed. The story didn't add up. For investigators, it was clear. The man standing in front of them wasn't a messenger. He was the killer. That same night, police obtained a search warrant and headed to the suspect's home, a small apartment on the second floor of On Hing Building in Lam Kor-wan. The man's name was Lam Kor-wan. When officers entered the unit, what they saw inside would haunt them for the rest of their careers. The apartment looked ordinary at first. Neatly arranged furniture, books stacked in order. But the titles on those books were chilling: anatomy, dissection, human biology. On a small desk, they found surgical tools, scalpels, scissors, and bottles of chemicals. When they opened the wardrobe, the truth spilled out. Inside were several glass jars filled with preserved human organs, breasts, genitals, and other parts, floating in clear liquid. Each jar was carefully labeled, as if part of a private collection. Nearby, they found boxes of women's clothing, high heels, and dozens of photographs showing bound female bodies. Some of the arms in those photos bore a familiar mark, the same tattoo found on the victim from the Shingmun River. As investigators continued searching, they made another grim discovery. Hidden in a drawer was an identity card belonging to Leung Wai-sum, a 17-year-old high school student who had vanished just a month earlier after attending her graduation party. At that moment, all doubts vanished. The quiet taxi driver, who had stood calmly inside the photo lab, was not just a suspect. He was the monster Hong Kong had been fearing for months. During a deeper search, police found 3 VHS tapes neatly labeled and stored inside a metal box. The titles read Serious Secret, Rainy Night Operation, and Fourth Operation. Each tape showed the same small room, Lam's bedroom. The camera was placed carefully on a tripod near his bunk bed. The frame never shook. Under the harsh white light, a woman's body lay motionless on the floor. Lam appeared in front of the lens, wearing gloves, holding a scalpel. In one tape, he dissected the body with clinical focus. In another, his technique had improved, smoother, more confident. The final tape, labeled Fourth Operation, revealed the worst of all. The victim was the missing student, Leung Wai-sum. This time, Lam went further. He violated her body before continuing the dissection, adjusting the camera as if composing a photograph. For the detectives watching, it was almost unbearable. There was no sign of panic or excitement in Lam's expression, only a cooled fascination. He was documenting his crimes as though they were medical experiments, or worse, a form of art. By the time the tapes ended, the officers knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary killer. This was a man who studied death. After the discovery of the tapes, investigators began piecing together the man behind them. Lam Kor-wan was born in 1955, the eldest son in a troubled Hong Kong family. His parents divorced when he was a baby, and he grew up under the care of a violent and short-tempered father. Beatings were common. He learned early on to stay silent, to avoid attention, to hide his emotions. That silence would later define him. As a teenager, Lam was socially withdrawn, spending long hours alone in his room. He developed a fascination with photography and anatomy, the study of the human body. At the age of 18, he committed his first crime. He kidnapped and sexually assaulted a woman at knife point. Instead of prison, he was sent to the Castle Peak Psychiatric Hospital, where doctors diagnosed him as mentally unfit for trial. After just 102 days of treatment, he was released. Following his release, Lam changed his name twice. First to Lam Kor-wan, then to Lam Kor-wan. He worked a series of jobs, eventually becoming a licensed taxi driver. At night, he roamed the streets of Hong Kong, driving through the city's red light districts and nightclubs, where he picked up drunken passengers and sex workers. Lam joined an adult photography course, learning how to control light and shadow, how to frame a subject. But his obsession grew darker. He started combining photography with anatomy, exploring ways to capture death, not just with his camera, but with his hands. He later told police that dissecting bodies made him feel powerful, in control and calm. Under interrogation, Lam was calm and emotionless. He denied everything at first. But as the evidence grew overwhelming, the jars, the photographs, the tapes, he finally confessed. Over several days, he described his crimes in disturbing detail, explaining how he killed and dismembered 4 women between February and July of 1982. The first victim was Chan Fung Lan, the nightclub hostess whose remains were found in the river. Lam said he picked her up while she was drunk, drove her home, and strangled her with an electric wire. The next 2 victims were also women he picked up late at night. He claimed he mistook them for sex workers, killed them, and disposed of their bodies in the hills of Hong Kong Island. The final victim, Liang Wai-sum, was different. Lam told police he spoke with her for hours inside the taxi about life, religion, and destiny. Then, without warning, he killed her, not out of anger, but curiosity. In March 1983, one of the most shocking trials in Hong Kong's history began. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, students, curious citizens, all eager to see the man who had terrified the city. Lam Kor-wan faced 4 counts of murder, with victims ranging from 17 to 31 years old. Because of the brutality of his crimes, the court selected an all-male jury, fearing female jurors would be too emotionally affected. The videos Lam had recorded were played for the jury, showing in horrifying detail how he dissected his victims. Many people in the gallery looked away, some left in tears, but Lam himself remained expressionless, hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor. Only once, when the name Liang Wai-sum was mentioned, did he lower his head and shed a single tear. After 20 days of trial, on April 8, 1983, the jury found Lam Kor-wan guilty on all 4 counts. He was sentenced to death by hanging. When the verdict was read, Lam showed no emotion. His lawyer considered an appeal, but Lam refused. "Don't waste the taxpayers' money," he reportedly told his father. His death sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment after Hong Kong abolished capital punishment, and Lam remains behind bars to this day. During a final search of his apartment, police discovered a handwritten manuscript over 10,000 words long. It was about Jack the Ripper, the infamous killer who haunted 19th century London. Investigators realized the parallels were deliberate. Like Jack, Lam targeted women, worked alone, and killed under cover of night. Jack the Ripper rode a horse carriage. Lam drove a taxi. Jack struck in fog, Lam in rain. When asked about his nickname, Lam reportedly smiled and said, "I prefer the Rainy Night Butcher. It suits me." At Forbidden Files Asia, we believe every story like this leaves more than horror behind. It leaves questions about justice, about empathy, about how much darkness a society can ignore before it finally looks inward. I'm Eric, and this was The Rainy Night Butcher, the true story of Lam Kor-wan. Thank you for watching.